All right, welcome everyone. This is Kristen Vincent, Chair of the Westborough School Committee. Today is Wednesday, February 2nd, 2022. It is Groundhog Day. This meeting of the Westborough School Committee is called to order, and please stand if you are able for the Pledge of Allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you for joining us this evening. Effective Wednesday, January 5th, 2022, the Westborough Board of Health requires that everyone, including fully vaccinated people, wear masks in indoor public settings in Westborough. The masking requirements apply to all individuals aged 2 years and above. Masks are to be worn completely over a person's nose and mouth. This order has been extended until February 8th, 2022, and may be extended to a further date if the Board of Health deems it necessary. I'd like to notify everyone in the room with us tonight that this meeting is being recorded by Westborough TV. School committee meetings are available for remote viewing or listening on Westborough TV's government channels, Verizon 28 and Charter 192, and online on the Westborough TV YouTube channel. And thank you to Westborough TV for covering the broadcast tonight and as usual. We have with us tonight Superintendent Amber Bach, Assistant Superintendent Dr. Daniel Mayer, Director of Finance and Administration David Gordon, Vice Chair of the Westborough School Committee Steve Jarrett, School Committee members Sarah Dulay, Lisa Edinburgh, and Raghu Nandan, our student representative Andrew Chen, and we have staff here from Westborough TV. Our agenda for the meeting is as follows. We will do an approval of minutes from the January 19th, 2022 regular session. Then we'll have superintendent's report, assistant superintendent's report, director of finance and administration's report. We'll have school committee member reports, building project updates, citizens requests. Then we'll have a presentation on the Ell Program. We'll have a COVID update. We will vote on the 2022-2023 school year calendar. We will debrief the town budget summit that happened last week, and then we will adjourn because there's no need for an executive session tonight. So we will begin with an approval of minutes from January 19th, 2022 regular session.
So move. I'll second.
Thank you. Any discussion? All right, all in favor to approve those? All right, those are approved 5-0. So I'm going to turn this over to our superintendent. Welcome.
Thank you very much. Good to see all of you. I do believe that Punxsutawney Phil saw his shadow, which for those of you who pay that attention, that means 6 more weeks of winter. So for us winter people, we certainly got a dose of it this past weekend. So a couple updates. I think the choral collage last week was fabulous, went off beautifully. They had shortened it to do 1 session instead of 2. The music repertoire was beautiful. It was just great to hear a wide array of choral groups singing again. And again, they do both individuals and then combinations of choruses. It's always just a very, very enjoyable event. I also want to note a couple SEL moments. You know, I think we've really tried to highlight to you the embedded SEL work for social emotional learning that goes on across the district and looking towards the wellness of our students and staff to have fun and joy and balance and the things that keep us doing well. So it was very enjoyable today for my rotation to visit at Fales when I arrived, and across district, not just at Fales, the second grades were holding a special 2-2-22 day event. So they had spray painted the snow with like love of twos all over the entryway of the parking lot area to greet people. Happy 2-2-22 day. They had hats, which were very hilarious.
Hope for you, right?
Yes, there's a photo that gives you a picture. They had like a photo booth when they had their
Shirts. and yeah.
22s. They read for 22 minutes. They found pairs of two. They had rotational stations with fun academic-centered themes related to the joy of number two and how much the number is just a really flexible and enjoyable number. So it was really a fun event. There was just a lot of great station work, and they had a big special snack downstairs and with their hats on. It was really fun to get them. They had balloons on their doors. It was just felt very festive, and there was just a lot of social emotional wellness, going on across some of the schools today at the elementary level. And so it just makes, even if it's one grade, the building feels just very festive, and it was a really happy morning. At Forbes, similarly, taking care of our wellness every once in a while, there was a Tom Brady special tailgate snack break today, even though there were several people who were waiting to celebrate because they were upset that they're a little salty that Tom didn't give a shout out to the Pats. I have to say my own family is a little upset. So it was a fun event, also full of humor and a chance for people in the offices who, pretty much just stay hunkered down at their desk working all day to take a break and come together and laugh and see each other. So it was really enjoyable. We also held the budget summit last week. I know we're going to debrief on that when we get down to the other meetings, so I just want to recognize that as I thought it was productive. And we had our finance meeting last night where we debriefed it a little bit further. I think there's a lot of work to continue, and we'll talk a little bit about that. I think between now and town meeting, though, I think being strategic as we've been in the past, as much as we can gather, to make sure that we're sharing information about the budget, that we're circulating, that we're talking to the community. And I think we need to, draw up a plan so that we have opportunities to circulate our information. I'm interested in working with Westborough TV and pushing some messages around, again, the importance of coming to town meeting to vote for all of the articles that run the mechanics of our community. So I think there's work to be done over the next several weeks. And that's my targeted update for tonight. I'll turn it over to Daniel.
Good evening. A few things. One, I'm sure Maeve's not going to go into the access testing, but that is an update in terms of access testing. Is this time of year, the Ell program is basically in full swing, testing all our students in terms of their language acquisition skills. Particularly difficult in this environment where we usually go from school to school. We move like on a schedule, having students, being out because of COVID. But it's all 360 some odd students are in the process of being tested. So it's always a busy time. It's also, as you know, the midterms have finished at the high school, so the first semester is over. There was some innovation that I talked about and gave you an update in terms of the midterms not counting as much as they usually do, it just to make it a little less academically intense because of the year that the students have been having. But there were some innovative things that were done, projects and group projects and such that we haven't usually seen. It seemed to work very well. One other thing I just wanted to highlight for you that I recently had learned about it in our social studies program. As you know, Kristen Robertson, in her role as the director of the coordinator of the K-6 program, she brought to my attention a new program that we're using that I'm going to highlight here, where they're bringing mock trials is something that we've done at the high school level. And it's this innovation to use because our social studies curriculum is now focused on higher order thinking and sort of logical argument starting at a very young age. I thought you'd be interested in seeing how we're getting the students into mock trials starting as early as first grade. And of course, it's grade appropriate in terms of the content here. You can see that the case that they argue there is the animals versus the little red hen. And the animals take the hen to court for a piece of her bread. And then the discussion item is, what makes a good community member? And that's the debate that goes on. And as they progress through the grades, it gets more and, sort of related to the civics issues that we're more familiar with, where you get to 5th grade and it's more about free speech and First Amendment rights in school. But there's a whole, scaffolding of logic of why we are doing the mock trials in the elementary schools that are highlighted by this slide here, is we're getting the students to not only talk about what is justice, but also be able to make an argument. So even in as young as 1st grade, you can marshal evidence and take one side versus another. And then you can have students, participate as a jury to make a decision about, and then present their decision based on a summary of the facts. So I just think it's an innovative approach to getting the social studies curriculum to be a little bit more engaging and relevant and pushing on those higher order thinking skills. So that's my update.
Thanks. Dave, do you have anything to share?
No updates tonight from me.
Okay, thank you. So we'll move into our school committee member reports. So I'm going to turn it over to Andrew. How'd the midterms go for you?
They were all right for me. I mean, most of my classes were just normal tests, but I know that some other classes had like projects or new things, and I think it went pretty successfully. First off, I want to say that the mock trial curriculum sounds amazing. I wish I had that when I was in 1st grade. I think like critical thinking and like developing those skills, the soft skills, really important in the social studies curriculum.
Right.
Yeah. Okay.
Did you do mock trial with the high school?
I personally don't. I did debate in 9th grade, and then I went 0-5 at my first tournament, and then I stopped doing debate. But it's a lot of fun. I have a lot of friends on the debate team.
Great.
I'm sure that the mock trial program will turn
Yeah, we're
out.
preparing debaters very early.
Yeah. Okay, so for my report, there will be a production of Eurydice, a contemporary retelling of the classic Greek myth. It will be next week, Thursday, Friday, Saturday at 7. They actually, like the cast, did like a small performance for my English class yesterday, and I saw it was pretty interesting. So I highly encourage anyone to go check that out. The next open meeting at the high school will be February 16th. I will be attending, and I'll keep you updated with any concerns or questions or anything that comes up.
But can you just reiterate again what that actually is? Like the open meeting?
Yeah.
Like,
So
thanks.
open meeting is a chance for students at the high school to get to talk with Mr. Callahan and school admin about any concerns or any questions about school policy, any ways to improve the school community, or just like whatever you want. You can basically voice your opinions, get a response, and just stay in touch. Yeah.
Thank you.
The boys hockey team this Monday, congratulations to them. They won the Matt Bruce Memorial Cup, which is a big deal. Hooray. Also, the student council is in the midst of planning a social emotional learning coupled event for Mental Health Awareness Week. We did this like a couple years back before COVID and all of that. So we're trying to bring that back. It's basically like spending the last period of a school day being able to do like meditation or like choose an activity to do for fun, for your mental health. There's like meditation, there's like board games, there's like a walk outside, things like that. And at Fales, they're holding a Winter Olympics event next week, which will include the biathlon, curling, speed skating, and bobsledding. So that's fun, yeah. And that's all I have for my report today.
Thank you, Andrew. That's right, the Olympics are starting, so that's great. Thanks. Sarah?
Since Andrew mentioned the hockey team, I was going to mention the girls varsity basketball team is undefeated. So if you get a chance to go down and watch them play, they're on a roll. So I hope they keep it up. Very exciting for them. I also just wanted to mention Project Graduation. We'll be back this year, and that is a community organization that puts on an event for the seniors on the night of graduation. It's like a lock-in where it's a chemical-free event and it gives the senior class a last chance to be together as a class. So that'll be on Saturday, June 4th, and the committee is looking for help with some volunteers. They get a lot of donations for food and donations from different companies and things like that. So if you want to be a part of that, you can contact Kim Kehoe. She's in charge of it this year. But it's a great event, so.
And anyone can join Project Graduation. You don't have to have a graduating senior. And in
No,
fact,
and actually,
it's good to
Thank you for
join.
saying that. They also look for people to spend the night at Teamworks with the senior class, and usually typically not senior parents. So, there's always the 2 a.m. to like 6 a.m. shift that's hard to fill. So if someone's a night owl, you could volunteer for that.
That's what I signed Mr. Bach up for,
Oh, good, perfect.
night guy. So
Yeah.
it's actually really neat to have parents that have, kids graduated quite a few years ago, but know the importance of the event, and he really had a great time. I haven't told him yet that I signed him up again. Public
Put
record.
him on the list. I'll put him down.
Anything else?
Nope, that's it.
Okay, great. Raghu?
Yeah, I have a couple of updates. One is last Thursday, the Kennedy School of Government at Harvard had an interesting webinar on where Secretary Judy Chang from the Massachusetts Executive Office of Energy and Environmental Affairs talked about climate change and policies, the energy policies that the Commonwealth is coming forth with that would directly affect the climate change. And it's on YouTube. It's a very interesting webinar for those who are interested. If you go to YouTube and just search for Kennedy School of Government webinar on climate change, you'll see that. So that would, for those who are interested, it's a very interesting webinar to listen to. And I'm very intrigued by the mock trial. That's a very interesting concept. Hopefully it will be expanded to other grades as well. We badly need people who can listen to, we adults have done a bad job at it, but at least kids should listen to the other side of the argument and accept, however extreme it may be, not just call them idiots or anything, just accept from where they are coming from, and looking at where they are coming from is very, very important skill that we need to teach our kids, teach us too.
That's right. Thank you. Lisa?
So I was a little behind on the 2 weeks ago, but I wanted to mention at the MLK Day, and I know that was mentioned at our last meeting, but there were 2 students who had their essays that they presented during that meeting. And I'm sorry if I pronounced their names incorrectly, but I want to give a shout out to Sanad Sachin Kumar and Ryan, I believe it's Rayan Kasim. But they were amazing, and you should go back to Westborough TV and listen to those 2 essays. And then there was the a cappella group from Westborough High School called Lift Every Voice, and they were pretty extraordinary as well. So if you hadn't been there that day online to see that event, you can go to Westborough TV and see the recording. It was excellent. And that's all I have for this evening.
Okay, thank you. Steve, do you have anything other than building updates? All right, I just have a few.
Well, I do.
That's all you do, but I have a few things, so let me just share, and then you can
Okay,
take over
yeah,
the
that's
building
fine.
project updates. There was an article in the Community Advocate about multiple area students in the running for recognition through the United States Presidential Scholars Program. And from Westborough, Arushi Pant is in the running for this recognition. So congratulations, that's an amazing accomplishment. And I just want to remind everyone to please put on your calendars March 19th. That is town meeting. It will be at Westborough High School in the auditorium with probably overflow spaces in the gymnasium. A lot of people have gotten out of the habit of town meeting in the past couple of years with COVID, but town meeting has been held every year, and we really, really, really need all voices to be heard and seen at town meeting. So please do what you can to come to town meeting on Saturday, March 19th.
Wait, what time is it? Is it still 1 o'clock, or is it moved to the
No,
morning
it's
again?
earlier.
I think it's moved to 9
Because I knew we had done 9 o'clock at some
I
point.
think it's 9 o'clock
I think
start.
it's 9 also.
Yeah.
o'clock start, yeah.
Calendar.
Do you want to say something else about
The
town-
election?
Oh, yeah, you can remind about that too.
We forgot to mention the local election on March 8th, Tuesday, March 8th, is the local election, and Mr. Steve Durrett is running for school committee. And there are 2 seats and 2 people running, and come out and vote. There's also, of course, all of the other committees that are looking for new people that are running. So come to, it goes from 8 a.m. to 8 p.m. at Westborough High School on March 8th. And there is a professional development day that day. So therefore, there will be parking available. And we'll be talking about the calendar today as well, about that March date in the future.
Thank you. Good reminders. All right, Steve, building project updates.
Well, actually, a few other bon mots, I guess. Candidates' night is February the 27th,
yep.
which I think is a Sunday.
Yeah, it's usually a Sunday.
Okay, so that's one of them. And the other one is the mock trial, I think was the next grade down from the first box. Who was the lawyer that represented the British soldiers? Do you know?
I don't know.
Don Adams.
John Adams, the man is right. Yeah, and in fact, it delayed some of the more harsh reactions to the massacre because the British soldiers were found innocent based on what actually happened that day. Okay, so now my piece is the building update, and I'm glad to state that the sprinkler system at Hastings is complete. They're going through final walkthroughs with the fire department, and hopefully we'll be done with that shortly. The Fails project is down to less than 20 punch list items, although there's a couple of biggies there. Most of the things that remain as punch list are items that just haven't been delivered, hardware components and these things that are still, I guess, lost in transit or whatever you want to say. But almost everything else that could be done has been done. The 2 bigger items, I guess, of interest are we have issues associated with the geothermal system that we're working through. The second was an issue associated with water entering the north entrance of the school gymnasium that has been a problem, and we're working on solving both of those issues. Meanwhile, the project will go to sleep based on the fact that the majority of the work left to do is site work associated with restoring the lower area and the final backfill and compaction of where the old building used to be, so that we can do the bus circuit parking area. And so that's where we are as far as construction goes. As was mentioned, the school committee, school district has a couple of articles on the warrant this year that we hope you'll be there for. One is the Armstrong Playground. Another is the chiller units at the high school. What's the third, Amber?
The walk-in freezer
Oh, yes, the walk-in freezer
at Armstrong.
at the high school.
And then we have another warrant article for the gap in funding for the HVAC bid at
Oh, yes.
Hastings, outside, as an additional to that capital. So you're right. We have several items that touch multiple schools, and I hope that people will come cast their thoughts in their voting.
I'll say including voting to approve the budget for the schools, which is an important part of town meeting, where all the budgets for the town, the operation of the town, are approved by the voters.
So that's it. Thank you.
Thank you. Any questions for Steve on the building project updates?
Good.
Good job. We're ready for citizens' requests. Is there anyone here who would like to make a statement to the school committee? Boyd, do you want to come up?
Yeah, I wanted to give a shout out Boyd Conklin, 8 Water Street.
Thank you.
How's everybody doing? Wanted to give a shout out to a new company in town, a learning lab type thing. They're teaching logic to kids. This is the book this guy wrote. He's a local Westborough resident. He's at 25 West Main. And he's opened a school in 2008 in Somaliland, and he's sent a couple of his students to Harvard and MIT, kind of thing. But anyways, I had my kids there on Monday, and this is quite a good operation. Anyways, I also wanted to address the mask mandates and the vaccines that you guys are continuously pushing. I understand that the Board of Health and the governor and the president are all pushing this kind of thing. The data is coming out, perhaps you guys haven't seen it, from the armed services, where they've got the 2020 data and on the forced vaccinations that they did to our servicemen and women. And so they've seen a 1,000% increase in neuropathy, 300% increase in miscarriages, and 300% increase in cancers. And so that's just part of what they're seeing with this thing. So I understand that the media is not informing you. Only the fake news apparently is carrying this information. You will understand it eventually if you don't understand it now. But pushing this vaccine on 6-month-olds now was coming up for all the kids and all the kids that are with the myocarditis and this kind of business. The people I listen to on this topic seem to think that for every child that you save in the adolescent group, you're going to kill another 50 with the vaccine. So you may save one with the vaccine, but you're going to get 50 with complications and long-term effects. And once again, this is emergency use. I understand the pharmaceutical companies want to make a lot of money. I understand that the powers that be would like to keep this fear-mongering and total control of the society, to have control of the next election so that they can do the drop boxes and this kind of thing and steal the next election. But well, I'm hoping that you guys will take a look around and do some research. I've sent you some links also. Hopefully you're looking at it and looking at Robert Malone's stuff or Peter McCulloch's stuff, kind of thing. Anyways, thanks a lot.
Thank you. And thanks for sharing about this, the author and the school. Jonathan
Starr.
Thank you. Yeah.
He lives down at 25 West Street in Westborough. Thanks.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Anyone else? Yep.
I just wanted to talk about.
So you just have to share your name and street address.
Oh, it's
and
Brenda.
then you have 3 minutes.
Yeah, it's Nipmuc Drive.
Okay, and you just have to speak right into the microphone.
Brenda Hughes, Nipmuc Drive in Westborough.
You have to. I'm sorry. If you don't speak into the microphone, people at home can't hear you. So.
So anyway, just talking about like the masks and for kids, it's just. I mean, I think there's been enough data nowadays that's. Pretty much shows that masks are not that effective at stopping COVID for kids in the schools, and that there's a lot more damage that's being caused by them wearing masks. And I've just noticed subbing in a lot of the elementary schools that it's unbelievable how sad it is really to see these kids in masks, and just to see how much they've declined in terms of their understanding, and I'm constantly having to ask them to repeat themselves I can't understand them. There's no like, smiling, and other people, oh, they're getting used to it. And it's like, that's sad. You should not have to get used to this. It's not normal, and it's not healthy for them. And the kids are really having a hard time learning. They are so far behind that it's amazing to me. I'm like, this kid is in 3rd grade and he doesn't know this, and he doesn't know that. And I've been subbing for years, and it's just extremely apparent this year how bad it is. And I think masks do have a lot to do with it. And it's very hard to gauge, their interests. Some kids will hide behind masks, like I said, in terms of understanding, them understanding me understanding them. It's just really bad. So I just had to say that. Just wanted you guys to know. Maybe you do, but anyway, that's all.
Yeah,
Thanks.
thank you. Thanks.
Thank you.
Anyone else? All right. We'll move on to the next agenda item. We have a Ell program update, so I'd like to welcome Maeve on up to the microphone, and she has a presentation to share with us as well.
So one of the things we work to do as you think about preparing budgeting, and you think about our discussions across the community about the quality of students we have, the strength of programming, and the complexity of what it takes to provide high quality service to a wide range of students. I think returning to these types of reports where you pick up the kind of data points that support you as you're answering questions for people, I think Maeve's report tonight is timely, and I will turn it over to her.
Thank you, Amber, and Happy New Year, School Committee. I haven't seen you since 2020.
Yeah.
And thank you for all of your incredible work during a pandemic. Who knew that this was going to strike? It almost sounded like it would be science fiction there for a while. But, again, it's almost impossible work, and you guys have done an amazing job, so thank you. We feel very supported by you. So, this first slide really just delineates who we have in the ESL department. Each school has a number of teachers based on the number of students that exist in the school. We also have in-house translators that are amazing. So Eileen Orta is our Spanish language translator, Kristen is our Arabic language translator, and Kenya and Claria are our Portuguese language translators. We have a new teacher that started in November, a former member of our team, Sean Inahosa, went to Brazil to be with family, and we hired Kurat Junaid, who's originally from Pakistan and has 2 children at Gibbons. She's fully licensed, she has a master's degree in TESOL, and we're really grateful that we were able to hire her mid-year. So our students, who are our students? We love talking about our students the best. Currently, we have 377 students who are receiving ESL services, language levels 1 through 5. Last time I reported to you, we had 470 Ls, so that's a decrease of about 20% in a year and a half. And that number decrease could be for many number of reasons. The H-1 visas were tabled for 18 months. There are travel bans around the world. And so the numbers decreasing makes some sense. We have 273 students who have tested out of the program. I'll talk a little bit more about what the kids have to do to test out of the program. And they are monitored for 4 years. So we work with their English and their math teachers for 4 years to see how they're doing and if they need additional services. And total number of licensed ESL teachers K through 12 is 19. Our native languages has changed slightly. So our primary languages that are spoken in the district in terms of numbers, Spanish, Telugu, and Portuguese are the majority first languages of our families. A rising number of Arabic language families has come into the district over the last 5 years, and Chinese primarily Cantonese speakers are also now a number that's rising. Our Hindu-Urdu population remains relatively the same, as does our Tamil population of speakers. I'll break that down a little bit more for you here. So 17% of our population of Ells and their families speak Spanish, 15% for Telugu and Portuguese. Cantonese has risen by about 5 percentage points since the last time I spoke with you. Hindi and Urdu remain stable at 9%. Arabic has gone up from 2% to 6.2%, and Tamil is relatively the same as it was in 2020. So the last time I presented, Telugu was the most spoken language by English learners in the district, and currently there's a little demographic shift, only by a few percentage points. Spanish is the primary majority language of our ESL population. And this slide, I love talking about because it looks at really the great diversity that we have in the district. We have students who speak Farsi. They're from Afghanistan. One family has graduated. They were from Iran. We have students who speak Kikuyu from Kenya, Malay from Malaysia, Luganda is one of the Bantu languages of Uganda, Kashmiri from Pakistan, Nepalese, Bangla, Punjabi, Korean, Japanese. Is that amazing? So we have all these different groups of people that are present in our district, which adds to, just an incredible cultural diversity. We have many of our second language speakers are from India. India is probably one of the most complex countries of languages in the world and historically. So 212 languages spoken in India, 22 official languages, including students who speak these languages in our district: Marathi, Oriya, Gujarati, Kannada, Konkani, and Tamil. So again, a pretty wide range of diversity. So we have access testing, as Daniel mentioned. It's required by federal law and also state law. We test students in their proficiency in reading, writing, listening, and speaking. And the test also looks at measured progress students are making over the course of 1 year to the next. The test is primarily given in January, and it ends around the second week of February. So as Daniel mentioned also, we had unprecedented absences as the test began in January, but we've moved through those tests with great progress, and currently the last 2 schools that are testing are Armstrong and the high school, and they'll be testing for the next 2 weeks. So composite scores. Composite scores are scores taken from the access test. So listening, speaking, reading, and writing are the four tests. And then what DESE does is it weights certain tests. So to get a composite score, it's the sum of 35% of the reading test, plus 35% of the writing test, plus 15% of the speaking test, and plus 15% of the listening test. Listening and speaking are weighted less because the test shows clearly that if a child is really integrating language and acquisition of language, you'll see that in the reading and writing, which is harder for anyone in terms of language learning. To score out of the program, a student would need to score a 4.2 out of a scale of 5. It's an interesting, this is K through 12 here, so yes, we even test the kindergartners. And I just want to say the kindergarten test is a kit and it's a game board. So no, we're not sitting there, they're not sitting there for hours with the headphones on. So if you look at the composite scores then, K through 12, what you see is there's a healthy number right in the middle, so developing. These are students who are in academic classrooms who are able to do most of the work on their own. They may struggle a little bit with writing, but they're generally doing well in classrooms. And then you have kind of sort of bookends here. Entering students, 84 students, those are students who are coming to us for the first time and don't speak English. And then 84 on expanding, and those are students who are ready to be exited from the program. This district has a very robust FLEP rate or FEL rate. So at the end of 3rd grade, if we get a child in kindergarten or 1st grade, they're out of the program by 2nd or 3rd grade. approximately a quarter of all kids who enter our district in kindergarten or first grade are not Ells by the time they go to Mill Pond. So I broke it down just a little bit more. I know this is a little bit dizzying. We'll get through it. So high school has currently 48 students, 28% are level ones, which means that those children are coming into our district for the first time. They're registering over the counter, generally August, September, and October. 25% are level threes. Those children are generally coming up from Mill Pond and Gibbons and have been here for a few years. And then 22% level four, and those students have generally been here in our program for about 4 years. Gibbons has 46 students. 16% of are level one, and those are half kids who are coming to the district for the first time, and kids who may have been in Mill Pond, 6th grade, and are coming still at level 1 or 2. 51% is a level 3, which is a great number. Again, they're primarily kids who have come up through Mill Pond and will be exiting at the end of Gibbons or first year of the high school. Mill Pond has 85 kids, 38% level 3, and so about 70% level 3 and 4. Those children are coming from the 3 elementary feeder schools. They may have come into our district in grade 2 or 3, and they're moving through fluency pretty quickly. 15% level 1s at Mill Pond are generally students who have just arrived. Fales, Armstrong, and Hastings are similar. Fales and Armstrong have 40-ish% level 4. Those are generally kids who have been here 3 years, who entered in kindergarten or first grade. The 20% level 1 at Armstrong are new families to our district, and Fales, I think, had 1 family this year who was new to the district. Hastings is a little bit different in the sense that many of the families have not had opportunities for education in their first countries or here. And 1 language is spoken at home, and that's the heritage language. So 36% are level 1, and 33% are level 3, and those kids are generally kids who have been at Hastings for at least 2 years. And there are 103 students at Hastings currently. Any questions on any of that? Yeah.
I have a question about, do we place them? In other words, after the testing and assessment of the composite, do you then place them into places based upon their level so that they're with teachers who are focusing on level 1 or level 2? Or whatever?
Yeah, so when they come in, we have several different ways of testing. We do something called the model testing, which is approved by the state. So, the access is in January. So we get a child in August. We still need to know what their language level is. So all students who come in are tested with something called the model, which is a sister of the access. And so it's comparing apples to apples in terms of where the child is in terms of language fluency. And then they are placed. So for example, if a child places on a level 1 or 2, as per DESE policy, they receive 90 minutes of instruction in ESL a day. If they score a 3 or a 4, they would receive 45 minutes of instruction a day.
So do you place them into Fales or Armstrong, or is it simply by where they're living and it's?
Yeah, so they're community schools. So they come in and they register with the district and they're placed in their community schools.
I guess what I'm really looking for is, I see that the staff is broken up pretty much proportionately between Fales, Armstrong, and Hastings based on the numbers that you have at each one, which makes sense. Yeah. I guess my question is, if someone comes into Fales and they're at level 1,
yeah, we provide services for that child with the staff we have at Fales. So all staff members are prepared to teach students levels 1 through 5.
Oh, okay. I didn't know.
Yeah. So no, we don't hire a teacher who just teaches level 1 or a teacher who just teaches kindergarten. So if a teacher, we have about 50% of our staff are licensed K through 12. And so they can teach in any grade level. But if they're teaching in the elementary school, they're open to teach any one of those grades based on scheduling and what the student needs are.
That's so helpful. I'm sorry, I was asking.
Yeah, no, I'm sorry, that wasn't clear.
And I guess my other question is, recently we saw at the last meeting, the preschool presentation was brought to us, and there had been an assessment on languages, and they've been doing, they had never done a full assessment until this year about the language differences. I'm curious if we prepare in preschool now for students coming in ahead of time. Do we do that composite testing, or do we wait until they're in kindergarten?
Yeah, so it's another great question. DESE does not require ESL services for preschool at this point. And part of the reason is it's impossible to test a 3 or 4-year-old with access. We do, as a district, hold open summer school for kids who are going from preschool to kindergarten, and they're invited there as well to help with language skills. But at this point, DESE does not have any directive to us to support with ESL services on the preschool level. That being said, I know that over 50% of the preschool are L's and are families who are multilingual.
Right.
You know, so we look at who the kids are as they're coming up. There's testing that goes on in May and June every year. And then sometimes we test in the summer if a child, again, they're very, very young kids. And sometimes they don't want to be tested. And so we don't make anyone get tested, but we would test them a little bit later on when they're more comfortable.
So she brought up that 74% are either English as a second language or non-English language spoken at home. And the reason I'm bringing that up is, are we prepared for incoming greater numbers? I noticed the 20% decline. Do we have flexibility on ups and downs in that?
I believe we do. Every year, the preschool has very high numbers of English learners, every single year. So the last time I presented here, it was close to 68% of preschoolers is what I presented to the school committee. What we do is we give them a lot of instruction and a lot of direct instruction, and we do a lot of measured progress as well. I mean, really looking at, is this child making progress, or is this child not making progress, and what do we need to do differently? And so, you know, as soon as those children hit primarily Hastings and possibly Armstrong as well, you know, they're placed with ESL teachers. We measure their progress, especially speaking and listening on those very early grades. And then we work with them throughout. Those kids who are coming from, those young children who are coming from the preschool, you know, 70% of them are coming from the preschool, you know, have an incredibly high fail rate. Almost all of them will be out of the program by 3rd grade. So there's a lot of strong work that's being done at K-3, which is inclusive of the preschool.
Okay. That's helpful. It just gives, I guess I'm wondering, do we have the right resources? Do we have the ability to go up and down when it comes to the numbers? And wanting to make sure that you're fully resourced so that, I mean, it's incredible to listen to the fact that they're out of there in 2 to 3 years, you know, and back at where they need to be. It's amazing.
It is amazing.
You're doing an extraordinary job, and it's great. Kudos to your staff. It was great to see who was in your staff. I had not seen that before, to know how many. I thought it was good to just see the numbers. And
I mean, we feel very grateful. We feel very resourced by the district, and I'm asked frequently in terms of how we're doing and what we need. So again, very happy with and grateful for the resources that are provided to from the district.
Great. I'm sure you'll hear Maeve talk about this, and we should, as she keeps moving. But you remember, too, that work is integrated into a robust general education experience. And so your classroom teachers working with the Ell teachers in K and 1 in particular and through elementary school, the best progress interfaced with the support of the Ell teachers is a diverse, interesting, robust, language-based classroom where students are getting authentic opportunities to engage with peers and a lot of structured visual language opportunities. And so, again, I think a shout out to Westborough teachers as a composite of a partnership with a strong Ell program create the energy for that robust FLEP and our kids thriving, which is exciting.
Yeah, and it is robust. So again, it's the teaming where we have ESL teachers and gen ed teachers together in classrooms. We don't isolate the ESL kids. We don't pull them out unless there's some. So for example, we might get a child who has not been in school in a couple of years. So putting that child right into a classroom often doesn't lend itself to measured progress. But that's not the majority of kids. That's a very small minority of children that we serve. But all of our kids are put into gen ed classrooms with ESL support. I mean, they need the academics as well as English. And it does take a village, and teachers work very hard, whether they're ESL or not, to ensure that the RLs are very successful. So in speaking of success, we are speaking, literally getting the kids to speak has...
Sorry, that was me.
Did you do that? So getting them to speak is incredibly important, particularly in the early grades. It's really important for all grades because students speaking and oral C is directly connected to literacy, reading and writing. And so for, when we look at professional development, and when I comb through those access scores every year, K through 3, I look at those speaking scores like a hawk. And if there's discrepancy in the speaking scores for K through 3, we sit in teams and we figure it out, and we figure out what the deficits were and why they were there and what we need to do better. So if you look at this chart here, a child who enters the district as a 5-year-old or 6-year-old, the more they're able to speak, the more they have fluency in oral C, the greater the reading and writing skills. So this chart just looks at reading, but the research shows for writing too. So if we have a child who has really robust speaking skills in kindergarten and first grade, by the time that child is 12, let's say at Mill Pond, their reading level is 5.2 years higher, which is phenomenal. So when we look at pedagogy and how to teach students who are speaking more than or learning more than one language, drilling into that speaking component in those early years, and all years, but in particular K1 and 2, is something that we need to look at, almost every single day while we're teaching. And a big drive towards that is what we're looking at in pedagogy this year, as we have been for the 5 years, but even more so this year because we were remote for a little bit, kids weren't speaking the way they would in a classroom, and so there's a big push for it right now. And we look at measured progress weekly and bi-monthly in terms of kids' oral C, particularly in grades K1 and 2. So federal grants, so we receive Title III grants from the federal government. Westborough receives about $125,000 a year. The Title III grant money is to support ESL programs or Ell programs. It is not to support teacher salaries in terms of hiring new ESL teachers, because that would be supplanting rather than supplying. So our grants are used for professional development. We've had district-wide workshops in second language acquisition for all teachers in the district, K-12, including the preschool. It's used for student support services. We run a year-long program after school at Gibbons, which really helps in terms of the kids really getting all the academics they need, especially if they come new to the district in Gibbons. We run an after-school program at Mill Pond as well, and we run an ESL summer school program for grades pre-K to 6. The third component of the grant is community programs, and so here we have a community program at Arrive. Literacy nights in the district's apartment complexes, we used to run 6 a year. It's changed a little bit with COVID. Tutoring in the buildings, and ESL evening parent classes, very supported by our parents and very well attended by our parents who want to learn English. So here we have, hundreds of kids and parents would come out for the literacy nights in the housing complexes. We're doing it a little bit differently since the pandemic struck, and that is we're going out to the housing complexes and holding small group tutorial sessions using the picture books. And the same with, so the ESL parent classes, they run for 8-week sections, is fall and spring semesters. And at the end, we would have this amazing smorgasbord of food from all over the world. It was so great. That has stopped for now. We're running the classes online, but we look forward to bringing the parents back into school. Any question on Title III? So courses that are run for the faculty and staff, the district's strategic plan is embedding diversity throughout what we do in our district. To help out with that in some ways, I co-teach a course with Armstrong librarian Laura D'Elia called Diverse Books, and I co-teach a course as well, Understanding Racist Racism, Understanding Race and Racism, co-taught originally with Ruchi Khanna, who has since left the district, and it will be continuing with Tisha Broomfield, who's a Hastings teacher. So the course Understanding Race and Racism has evolved over the last 7 years. So it used to be called Proficiency. We were trying to get our feet wet in terms of how this would go, what it would look like, who we would bring in. So the course right now really does delve into conscious and unconscious bias, the history of explicit and implicit racism and its roots by way of policy and laws in the United States, structural racism that exists in all stratas of our society today. And we look at anti-racism as an action and not as an emotion, so that people can have conversations with each other where people are really listening to each other. Some of the texts we use include How to Be an Anti-Racist, White Fragility, Why Are All the Black Kids Sitting Together in the Cafeteria, and that's by Dr. Tatum, and she has zoomed into our course a number of times. Between the World and Me, and Past. We bring in guest speakers from human rights and immigration attorneys. The Iman from the Worcester Mosque speaks with the group. I mean, we have a lot of people that come in as well throughout the course. When we have the course, we don't want our Black and brown colleagues to feel that they have to be the one to explain what it's like to wake up not white in the United States or in Westborough. One of our colleagues in the last course we taught, she's African American, and she talked about how she and her husband, who's from Jamaica, were at the Whole Foods on Route 9, and someone called the police on them, and they were taken out of their cars. And this teacher was so upset because she was like, this is Route 9. This is where my colleagues shop for food. This is where my students could see me. There was nothing they had nothing on her. There was no reason for her to be stopped. But that instance of being pulled out of her car because someone called the police for a reason that she was never clear on, deeply, deeply affected her. And we want to protect, in some ways, but also encourage our colleagues who are colleagues of color to speak, but also not to feel the burden of pulling that course along and getting everyone to understand. So we also show pieces of films. Are you okay with a 5-minute film? Yeah, okay. So we show pieces of film which are visual and visceral, and people get it pretty quickly. So Daniel's gonna set up. So this is from the New York Times. It's that first one, Conversations with My Black Son. There, Daniel, on the bottom. I
think it's this one.
Is it?
Yeah, I staged it, so.
Okay.
I'm hoping. Let's see.
Racism means
So it's not.
basically
No.
like
A large part of
That's the one we were playing before. That's not the one you want?
So it's that first one that says so Daniel?
Yeah, up
So
or down?
So Conversations with My Black Son, so the first one there.
I love it when that happens.
Hopefully it will.
Okay.
Okay.
The
I
light?
think it's going to do.
Yeah, why don't you
Sure.
do it?
This is the right one?
Thank you.
My father's conversation with me was daily.
My grandfather talked to me as a black man from Augusta, Georgia, growing up in the Deep South.
It's probably Rob, my older brother, had this conversation. But then it's more of like, wear a condom, do this. It's like little man lessons.
When a cop pulls you over.
When you get pulled over, not if you get pulled over.
At some point, you will get pulled over, and here is how you act.
As a young black man growing up in New York, I've had, a few run-ins with the police and being completely innocent.
The people pull us out of the car, throw us on the floor. It's in February, so it's like snow and slush and stuff on the ground. put their knees in our back, put the guns to our head.
As I'm putting my hands on the steering wheel so I don't make the police nervous, I realized how nervous I was. And then I realized my children were nervous.
The thing that people say is you have to talk to him before he experiences racism himself. But when is that?
He is going to turn into a large, scary black man. And that's not who he is, but that's how he will be perceived. I know what this kid's going to look. He's going to look like him. You know, I know what he's going to look like.
I'm a large, scary black man.
You are a large, scary black man. Okay?
That's a problem in and of itself.
And that's a problem.
I am not large nor scary.
I can't do anything with that.
I'm short. Anyway, go ahead.
It's frightening, and I'm being very light when I use the word frightening.
If something goes wrong, your first line of defense, your parents not being there, is to go to the police.
If you're Caucasian.
So, but I mean,
yes,
still,
that's what you teach your children. Unfortunately, it can't work for black children, right?
It doesn't mean that every police officer is inherently a bad person. But what it does mean is that the police force, that institution, does not look out for your best interests.
There's this unspoken code of racism and white supremacy that says that my life does not matter.
You can put your hands up and say and cooperate and say that I'm choking and still be killed, and then there's no repercussions.
It's maddening. I get so frustrated and angry about having to prepare my kids for something that they're not responsible for.
And these are conversations that people of other races do not have to have with their children.
The conversation with him was really just, look, you're a beautiful young boy.
Being an African American is a wonderful thing. It's a wonderful blessing. You have come from great people, but it's also a hard thing.
In America, because of your skin color, as a black boy and as a black man, we are going to be dealing with a lot of danger.
Under no circumstance are you to talk to the police if you're arrested until I get there.
Do what they say. Don't get into any arguments.
Make sure your hands are out of your pockets so they can see.
These are the questions you can ask. This is who to call. This is what happens if this bad thing. It's not like, please, master, don't whip me. No, it's like, excuse me, sir, what is your badge number? I'm going to film this.
If you want police brutality to stop, if you want police to treat you like a human being, then you have to see yourself as a human being.
You have every right in this world that anyone else does.
What I love about you as my son is I remember when we thought about having you and, knowing that we wanted you and watching you grow.
You are the Muhammad Ali, you are the Malcolm X, you are the Martin Luther King.
You are an amazing young man, and the future is yours.
And I will do my best to make sure you're safe. That's it. I love you.
So again, it's the course is really set up to get teachers and staff members to understand what it's like to be someone who is not part of a dominant culture, and what that means when we have parents who come in to our schools who are not of the dominant culture, who may not speak English, or who may be Black Americans who do not feel like they belong there. How do we change ourselves? We're not interested in changing our parents or our students. How do we change ourselves so that people feel equally empowered, that the school district belongs to them, and they have every right to be part of the community that we serve. So not an easy course to teach, but it's a very gratifying course because people do want to go on the journey, and they do want to be better in terms of their understanding of, privilege versus non-privilege, and how we can kind of sort of go through our lives without thinking of the other and without thinking of, what is the most empathetic act we can give to our families and to our students who are not of a majority culture. Thanks for being able to wire that up there, Daniel. The second course that is taught, and hundreds of people have taken the second, I do have the clicker, is the diverse picture book course. So the top, and I had 10 books I was supposed to bring just to show you, but they're in my office. Topics include identity, culture, the Own Voices movement. That movement is who can tell a story, and how does one tell a story? Can someone who's not of a culture tell a story from another culture? Journey stories, so immigration stories. We work with our participants to look at how to conduct research in terms of what are authentic stories in picture books. Dr. Krista Aronson from she started the Diverse Book Finder at Bates University in Maine, comes into our course and talks to the teachers and staff how to use that book finder. And we look at how to connect diverse picture books to our curriculum K through 12. So we have picture books that are now, it's not what, a picture book, I'll just say for myself, it's certainly not a picture book that I would have seen growing up necessarily. Picture books are very, very sophisticated. These days, the 8th grade uses a picture book called, in their history class, social studies classes, Separate is Never Equal by Mexican-American writer Duncan Tonnecut. We have used picture books in the literature in 7th and 8th grade as well. And it's really, the kids love them. So it doesn't mean because it's a picture book that the content and the narratives are for kids who are 5 or 6 or 7 years old. I mean, picture books, and you look at graphic novels as well, in a sense, that's a very different way of looking at reading a story or looking at a story. So for the ESL students as well, the picture books, like the pictures are almost telling a story with the writing as well. Now there are, big awards for picture books. And again, if you look at some of these picture books, so the Investor of Physics, it's written on an 8th grade level. So again, we've had faculty pre-K through 12 take the course. We have a picture book collection that Laura and I have been curating for about 6 years. So any money we get, so I got a little bit of money from Fulbright, a little bit of money from National Geographic. We apply to Westborough Educational Foundation every single year to get funding for it. We have about 400 titles, and anyone in the community can come in and take out a picture book. Any teacher, any staff member can come in and take out a picture book. It's housed at Armstrong simply because we had some space. It could have been anywhere, but it's currently housed at Armstrong. So when I came in, 2 years ago in 2020, I was talking about a program that we had begun in the district for the Ells, which was called Picturing Writing. And many of our Ells, as you know, from that discussion, have varying degrees of trauma. And sometimes that trauma leads them not to speak or not to engage. And so what we tried is to have the kids paint out their stories, paint out their immigration stories. And what we found is not just for the Ells, but for general ed kids who are painting out immigration stories or stories of narratives of being adopted or narratives of moving from one place to the next or narratives of a grandparent who's from another country who died. We found that their writing really excelled, that the kids were very interested in all the modalities of the picturing, and then they came up with the writing. So I explained the story of a girl who came to us from Egypt, and she wrote her story about riding her grandfather's camels past the pyramids She wrote about going down to the ocean with her grandparents and her cousins and the babies and everyone, having a great time at the ocean, and how strong her family was, how big her family was. And then eventually she started towards the middle of the book talking about why she came to the United States. And this, child at the time, when she was a teenager, also witnessed a beheading. And she's in our classrooms. And we're working with her on math and social studies. And she has this story. And she wrote about the story, about watching the beheading. She wrote about why it was happening in her country. And she wrote about the horror she and her family experienced from that. And no one knew that she had this in her background until she wrote her story. We had no idea. And she wrote about leaving Egypt. There she is crying on the airplane. And leaving her family and everyone she knew and her school and her dog. And, the multiple layers of trauma were pretty exquisite. But she said she felt like her story was finally out and she could move on. So I saw an essay from her, she's in the high school right now, that she wrote just a little while ago, a few months ago. And so this is a child or a teenager who came to us, within the last 4 years. And I'm wondering if a school committee member would read the last paragraph in this essay. Do you have any volunteers? Like get you involved, right? We're supposed to be getting people involved in our classes, right?
I'll read it. My curiosity has no limitations. Knowledge is the fuel that feeds my imagination, not a forbidden, treacherous cloud. America has not only given me the opportunity to learn, but it has also empowered me to step into a new role, bringing justice and visibility to the stories and voices previously dismissed. I have a new aspiration now, where I use my eager desires to shield others from discrimination and injustice. I am driven to create a better world, one where every person is entitled to pursue answers to their questions, whether personal, religious, or scientific.
Thank you very much. So again, she's been here in the country when she wrote this 3 years. It's extraordinary, so we love working with our students who are culturally and linguistically diverse and coming to us from all over the world. And it gives us great joy to see their progress. So again, thank you for your attention. Thank you for having me in. And again, a big thank you for working, with us through this pandemic. And I can only imagine the stress it has been on all of you as well. Any questions before I?
Any questions for me?
One quick comment. On the picture books, is there any way you can make some of it available at the town library so that not just the school community, the others who may not be able to avail this can avail it through the public library?
So the question is, can we make the picture books available in the main library?
Yeah.
I can certainly talk to them about that, but as a parent, you can come in and you can take out any of the picture books as well. But I can certainly give the list that we have.
Convenient, yeah.
Yeah, I could certainly give that list to the public library, and they're incredible. Anytime I ask for something, they're able to find it. But yeah, I think that's a great idea, and I'll definitely do that.
And I would say the public library does have a wide range of diverse books from authors of color and depicting characters of color, and I know that they work really hard to build that as well. Yeah. And I did have a question about the books on the bookshelf in Armstrong. Is there a way to get them into the hands of the students, like in terms of keeping them in the classroom libraries?
Yeah, so we have some back and forth with that. And so Laura and I look at that, and, my way of looking at it is they're books and they're for people, and people could be anyone. And I think the other way of looking at it is they're a teaching tool, and we want teachers to use it, and we want teachers to be able to embed curriculum with it too, and so we want those books there.
Yeah.
But in terms of getting them into kids' hands, yes, we're working on it.
Yeah, for all our students, just build out those classroom libraries, make them as diverse as we
for
can.
sure.
I think that's to note on that. I mean, I think we keep we do keep a range of like texts that are teaching tools that teachers can check out and use. But I would, give a shout out to all of our libraries and our classroom libraries, but then also our building-based libraries that have worked very hard to continually diversify both voice and cultural range across the texts that are visible, and I think have made really steady progress in that, and I think more to come. But yeah, I think these are really specified where you can do some targeted work, which is really good as well. So, yeah.
Wonderful. Thank you.
Thank you for your work.
Thank you so much, and thank you for coming tonight.
Thank you, May.
We
very,
missed you.
very much.
Thank you.
Yeah. So, we often are trying to just get a picture of the complexity of, we have a thriving, diverse, successful student body, and the trajectory of time and the development of their skills, and their personal successes, their academic successes, their becoming members of the community, both as Westborough families, but also school-based membership. It's just got these layers of trajectory, and take the personal communication and teaching of our teachers. And so as we look at that cost effectiveness, as we look at value-based discussions, we really have a staff that are helping students be successful. So again, as we think about articulating our budget, it's very helpful to have a picture kind of those layers of complexity. I think when people visit classrooms, you might walk in and you might not know that there's a student, that there could be 3 to 5 students embedded in a classroom with very, very early emergent language skills sitting there trying to access that education, and then to make both the language growth but also the content academic growth. So, I think that's the piece that these reports give you.
Can I share a quick SEL moment that this reminded me of? My daughter's in 6th grade at Mill Pond, and they discovered that a few students in their class had come here and hadn't experienced snow before. So after the snowstorm this week, the whole class got to have a snow play date outside, and I believe there was a lot of sledding going on, and it was just a great moment, and show them our culture of sledding. So they got to share their snow traditions with their fellow classmates.
I was at Gibbons the Monday after snow, and the kids were out there at the bus dismissal, and they were all playing in the snow piles. It was like they were 5. But again, we were talking about, for some of them, many of the students embedded, yes, snow was new, which was kind of fun.
Yeah, that's great.
All right. Are you ready for me to continue?
Yeah, we can move on to the next agenda item. That is our COVID update.
Thank you. So an important part of our ongoing work is, as we stage changes to process and move through our year, I want to give you a couple updates this evening around our current work. So one important piece would be, as we look at the fact that we continue to see a steady improvement in our numbers. As we look at this week's numbers, we had 51 students with positive test results and 9 teachers. That's a 44% reduction in student cases, down from 115 the week before, and it's a 38% reduction in staff cases, where we had 15 staff and down to 9. So you see kind of a precipitous, important decline in numbers, which we hope will continue to trend. We'll be watching that this week. I think it's also interesting to note that the staff absence rates, which we track all kinds of data, obviously. You looked at the line graph that had the student absence. We also track faculty absence, and in the first weeks of January, first week in January, about 5% of staff absences were related to COVID-based absences. And now, as of the last week, it's down to 1.5, edging down from 2%. So we're seeing also that decline, which means fewer absences where teachers need to be out due to their family having COVID or themselves having COVID. So again, all those numbers trending in the right direction. And I think as we look at other data, we're now currently moving into implementing this next phase of the protocol phase from DESE and DPH. I attended a webinar today and then one last week where the Department of Public Health was working to walk through their work with the Department of Education to move to this next at-home testing model. And we released on Friday, I put out a new FAQ that provided some recent updates, and I was gonna take you through here, this table, which just I'll highlight, and yeah, Daniel, maybe close the pivot table there. There we go. All right, so currently as we move into this next phase, we have about 3,200 people participating in the at-home testing program. So as you look at those numbers, you have a general really strong bell curve across all of the schools. You can see that, for example, at the high school at the bottom there, you have 122 staff participating and 700 students. You're looking at roughly 64 to 65% then of the student body at the high school participating in the at-home testing module. You see, if you look across the elementary schools, a similar structure of 60 to 70 staff participating. Again, like up around 75% of our general numbers of staff members in each building, and then a pretty robust percentage of students. So for example, you see it fails, you've got 304 students participating. That's a very high percentage of participation rate. And then again, if we look at Mill Pond, which is close to right now currently 800 and plus students, there's 630 students currently participating. So I think a very robust entry in our first week. And so a couple highlights on that in terms of how it will continue. So we pushed out tests to faculty last week. Sunday was their first, and this past Sunday, 2 days ago, was their, well, several days ago now, was their first at-home test module. And then tomorrow we will disseminate to all families participating the test kits home, and families will do their first test day on Sunday. I originally thought we would push them home Friday. There might be snow, but I think given that we have a lot of other pieces of things that go on Fridays, Thursday feels like a good day to get into a rhythm for disseminating the test kits. So today they arrived. We basically, I want to give a shout out to Andrea Macknick, my assistant. Andrea and I are kind of a two-person show on this with some great help from our data architect, Scott Henderson, who manipulated all the lists so that we could get them dropped into class lists and building lists so that they can hand them out at the school level. So the dissemination of the teacher ones was really easy. We just, made them available in the office or in their mailboxes. Student obviously has a little bit more complexity. So they delivered the tests today with individual bags where they'll bag them by class and deliver them, and then they'll backpack them home. So classroom teacher pre-K to 6 will get their list, see who's participating, hand them out to kids to backpack home tomorrow at the end of the day. Middle school, they'll disseminate them probably using the first period class lists, and then at the high school they'll set them up for a kind of a check and go, so they can go up by alphabetic, and they'll set up a couple stations, almost like they do the snack breaks where they break them out by stations and students can go and check out their test. So I just want to give again a thank you to the admin team. As we've moved through this phase of work, we've really tried to streamline the numbers of people that need to come together and participate in decision-making in terms of like protocol, but not just protocol, but really mechanics of things like this. So it's about as tiny a module as we can get. It's Andrea and I and Andrew from maintenance driving them around. And so kind of a small and mighty team. Assistants at the building levels are so good. They hopped right in, and then everything pushes to the building level, and I'm hopeful it will be fairly seamless tomorrow. I just want to note to parents, if you're listening, that I think this first week will kind of be the most complicated. The way the design of the system works is from whenever you opt in, we have a deadline where we have to submit the numbers, and there will always be people that are trying to opt in that might need to wait an additional week. If we have extra test kits available, because someone opted out, we'll rotate them to those people, but it'll take us, it's going to take us a little it's a new routine. And so I anticipate it to go pretty smoothly tomorrow, but if there's a problem, they can call their school office and they'll get help.
And just to clarify, each box has 2 tests, so it's
Each
like
box
for 2
has
weeks.
2 tests, and so the timing of those work out really well against vacation cycles. So their first test will be Sunday, and then they test every Sunday, and then they'll get another set of kits like the week of the 13th. So, and then that will carry them 2 tests, one during vacation week and one the Sunday, the night before they return after vacation week. So it's kind of nice that the rotation provides that backup. So that's the model of implementation. We tried to keep it as again, streamlined as possible. We still continue at the building level to do the symptomatic-based testing. If a student or a faculty member has symptoms, they can test at school by going down to the school nurse. We're currently running all of the protocols that I put out in the FAQ and that are really up to date with the way we've been doing work for the last several weeks, which is the 5 days of quarantine, not quarantine, I apologize. When you have to stay home, it's not quarantining.
Isolation.
Thank you, isolating.
What is isolation?
Is a 5-day, and then you can return after that and mask for the second 5 days. Those protocols all remain in place. We move away from contact tracing and test and stay in terms of that framework of the model, and then into this new phase. So we answered questions on that last week. I pushed out an additional FAQ. We'll continue to provide updates. I think people have a rhythm for it at this point in terms of a transitional phase, use the FAQ, send us questions, and we'll continue to, remain moving forward. So that's the current status of where things are. I think, again, our numbers are trending in the right direction. Our participation rate is very robust, and our vaccination rates remain very high. So those are things that I think are good news points about where we are.
Thank you. Do
You're
you have
welcome.
questions for the superintendent?
Well, I have a question about, I have a question to our committee about flexible masking. The town, if you hadn't heard, you didn't watch the Board of Health meeting last night, extended the mask mandate for another week. And we'll be meeting weekly to make those updates. But I wondered from our committee whether, since flexible masking policy is already in place, but our implementation has paused due to a mask mandate, I guess my question to our committee is, we had said we would talk about it on February 2nd during the COVID update. Here we are. And I guess the question is, we received a lot of feedback today as school committee members from our community, and I feel like it's our responsibility to respond to some of that as we are at the COVID update. Are there thoughts from other people?
Yes. In looking ahead at our calendar and thinking about cases, continuing to drop, I would suggest that we restart flexible masking at Gibbons and the high school starting again on February 28th. That is the day that we come back. That's the Monday we come back from February break. So I feel like that gives us time to get to February break, have February break. We'll have 4 weeks of the at-home testing, so we will have that routine and protocol in place. People would be able to test that Sunday night before coming back from vacation break. And then I would say restarting the flexible masking at Gibbons and the high school with the same protocols that we had in place earlier, where some classrooms may have to fully mask due to a medical reason or other issues. So kind of just going back to what we had in place before.
So I could get on board with that date, but I would also throw out suggesting maybe switching back to flexible masking as soon as the Board of Health reverses their mandate for the same reasons that I had in December. And I just feel like it would be good for the students, and they know how to do it. We did have that trial 2-week period. The protocols were in place. I think it'd be an easy switch over, and I think it'd be welcome to many students. And right now I realize that we're only talking about the high school and Gibbons, because still under DESE, they're at the 80% threshold, and we have the waiver. So just for the purpose of this specific conversation, it's the high school and Gibbons.
I agree with that. I'm wondering if there should be a metric in place so that, let's say, the Board of Health lifts the mask mandate, and we look at the numbers and we think they're too high, or we look at the numbers and then we think they're low enough. I'm wondering if we should have a metric in place so that it's automatic. No matter what the Board of Health does, as soon as they lift a mask mandate, if you look at the numbers from the weekly update from the week before, do you feel like there's a number, like a 1%? And I say that number, I say 1% because Northborough, Southborough School Committee discussed this months ago. And they have a medical committee that sort of meets, and they were thinking, I don't know if they were thinking 1% or 2%. So, when I think about it, if the numbers were 12 and under, if the numbers were 6 and under, 12 and under at high school, 6 and under for middle school, if we had a metric in place, it would just be an automatic. And I think of it that way because even if there's no mask mandate in the community, there may be a time when we feel like we should put one in place in the school. And at the same time, I want to just finish what Sarah was saying. We received a lot of feedback wanting to move forward on requesting waivers at the younger grades to see, and first to find out if we have an 80% threshold of vaccination. So I would like to be able to direct our superintendent to collect that data so we know where we're at with the others so that we can proceed with requesting waivers for
Well, actually, that brings up a question on my part, which is, are the authorizations still in place from DESE based on recent changes, such as what happened, I guess, in the more or less the first of the year, where DESE began to make changes relative to many things. So are we still free as a school committee to make that decision on our own, irrespective of whatever the Board of Health does? And does it still only apply to the high school and the middle school? So that's my question. What do we know about what DESE's authorizations are as of right now?
So I can answer pieces of that. Currently, DESE's designation is that the parameters for flexible masking, and we've been receiving information from them all the way along as a cohort of people. Anybody who's applied to DESE and who has been onboarded at that 80% comes into this group, so that group has availability just to get updates that are streamlined specifically to those people that might have different planning in place. And so in all of DESE's and DPH's released guidelines, they have indicated that against, where things stand now, that even when they put their other delayed masking discussion in place, that the 80% people were kind of riding in a different pool. They see that once you've received that, you move into your flex masking opportunity. So from DESE's standpoint, they're sticking with the parameters that the people that have applied for that waiver continue to move forward with that available to them, and that you can apply for it and onboard other schools. So that's the methodology that they're leaving in place. They might release that at some point. I don't know. Right now, my current understanding, based upon everything I've kind of listened to in the last week, is that we would need to, when we hit that 80% benchmark at the other 4 elementary schools, onboard those schools in the same application process. So, And if that's part of your conversation tonight and you want me to go ahead and look at those numbers and see if we reach benchmark, we could apply. And then if we receive the waiver, it would allow us to open up the planning discussions that would follow the same model that we utilized with Gibbons in the high school, just to answer the same core questions and to put a plan in place. So I believe that's the state's particular perspective right now, that they're going to continue to onboard schools towards flex masking as they hit that benchmark. The discussion about whether or not the schools could function if they have a town mandate on masking and an internal school-based, I would say that's a legal question. You would see consult to clarify authority. So there's varied opinions on that. I mean, I think we've tried to go collaboratively forward. I'm assuming that if the trends and numbers continue in the right direction, that the Board of Health at some point will waive their masking mandate, and again, then we fall in that same parameter in terms of implementation by building. That's kind of my current working knowledge.
So currently, our flexible masking only applies to the high school and the middle school.
Until we apply to the other ones to onboard, yes.
So on that basis, I would agree with Lisa's concept, which is to begin collecting data for the other schools at some point in time when we achieve the 80% goal, assuming it's still the goal that DESE has, that we could make such an application.
Definitely, and I think we've articulated a couple times that that would be our path, and we would do that. So I can certainly act on that now and look at where our numbers are and give, check we did a couple additional checks in the sense that I would probably do the same survey that we did, because if you go back to what we did, we looked at what was in the state database that gave us that benchmark, and we hit it easily at the two schools. We still then put out additional survey data to confirm additional vaccinations that might not have been pooled in there that we could pull into that number. So I'd probably go through that same process and see where I can report to you and keep you updated. Again, some districts feel that they'll struggle to get to a place where they will hit that benchmark, which is at some point the state DESE might release people from that parameter, but right now that's their current plan.
And I guess in the same breath then to update the school committee's jurisdiction in regards to this question relative to the town's Board of Health.
Sure, we can seek an update on that discussion. I mean, I think that, and again, I listened to the Board of Health discussion. I think they're, going to wait another week. I mean, certainly the numbers in town are trending in a direction where I anticipate they will. But again, we have to wait and see that they, as an independent board, will need to make their decisions. So I would say where we stand right now is we would be queued up to move back to flexible masking in two circumstances: either a date you pick where you want to see if you can work outside of the parameters of the Board of Health's guideline, or as the Board of Health releases their mask mandate, you would move into that same framework, basically. So to Sarah's discussion, I mean, you have to keep talking it through.
Yeah. That's why when I said this is specifically high school and Gibbons, I did want to get to the conversation. I just was thinking that we'd finish that and then do that, but that's fine. Okay. It's all good. In regarding the metric, I jotted down like 4 things off the top of my head why I don't think we should use a metric. The first being it's still flexible masking, so anyone's able to mask at any time. We're not taking that away from anyone. So if you feel like you need to wear a mask, everyone can wear a mask. I feel like that should be a family-based decision, wearing the mask or not, so the family can have a conversation about that. And if the numbers, seem a little uncomfortable for one family, they might not be for another, and then they can have that conversation. The third thing is the metrics are supposed to be data, but I don't know, we still find them always to be somehow subjective. So I don't know about the data anymore. And testing, with the self-testing and the kits, same thing we've been saying, if you feel sick or you have symptoms, you can take your test or you can just stay home. So that's my feelings on the metrics. I wouldn't suggest having one.
Yeah, I would disagree with having a metric. We haven't done that at all in this whole pandemic. And
even if we wanted to, I think it's premature until we answer some of these questions from DESE and particularly relative to our jurisdiction versus the Board of Health's current order, and for that matter, the order by the town manager.
I don't think we were having the discussion based on while the mask mandate is in place. I think, are we talking about as soon as it's not in place?
Right, that's what I felt you suggested.
Whenever that
yeah.
is.
Yeah.
Yeah, okay. No,
Yeah, but
because
it's still necessary to get the answers to these questions because we sort of were in the whirl, if you will, in January as to who did what to who.
We did seek a legal opinion.
We did. I just want to know if it's
We
still
can
true.
get it updated,
Okay,
sure.
because everything turned in January.
Yep.
In terms of where things were going. So I want to know.
I think that the discussion will center on whether authority, some of the authority discussion as a legal concept looks at whether or not they're in a state of emergency. And if you're in a state of emergency, what board garners jurisdiction? And there's some of that discussion. But I think, you know, the Board of Health is having their discussions, and I believe that they didn't want to wait 2 weeks. They wanted to wait 1 week because they felt that they might be in a better place to make that decision. And I think, you know, I think your discussion tonight is certainly, you know, is informative in planning. Right now, you're talking about Gibbons and the high school, and I've heard you say two pieces, which is an option to consider unmasking, going back to flex masking after return from February break, or parallel to when, you know, at an earlier date when the town lifts their mandate. So
I guess I was anticipating that the town, once they looked at the numbers next week, or, you know, whenever if they're doing weekly, then that would get us there a little bit prior to the February break, but.
And also by deciding now what our schools would do, then people can prepare for, emotionally, for the transition to flexible masking. It can also prepare, is there any other immunocompromised classrooms that need to be set up? You would know now ahead of time and at least have at least a week, if not, depending on what the Board of Health does, 2 weeks or more. You know, I think knowing ahead of time would be really helpful, even if it's whenever that mandate ends. Or, I mean, for me, after vacation feels much further away, even though it's only a couple weeks. But it seems like we would easily transition into flexible masking because it's already been set up. All the parameters that we added for safety layers have been set up. It's just a matter of communication.
Yeah, my point is, as a parent, I didn't like the fact that we went on flexible masking, then we had to stop, then we went on and we are planning to flexible. As a parent, it drives you crazy. As an administrator, it should drive you crazy. So if we are going to go to flexible masking, we should be very careful on the date. We are definitely going to flexible masking. That's not even a question. But we have to be very careful on the date where we don't do this again. We go to flexible masking, stop, go to flexible masking again. That's not good for the kids. That's not serving any purpose. That's not good for the administrators. Just an overload of work. So
that drives you to the question of what's the metric? Because if we're going to be careful not to be caught in the whirlwind again, then we have to have a parameter by which we make the decision. So is it DESE allows it and the Board of Health withdraws their mask mandate? Or some date certain where the world hasn't changed much and we're just going to do it?
Well, it's hope and subjection. So hopefully this will go away at some point. It's not going to linger back in. But at the same time, taking the best guess, you know, if we do it after the February vacation, by the time the next, break comes along, Omicron or whatever the variant that is not there to affect the numbers that we saw soon after the Christmas break. Right. So that's the hope that we are doing it. But at the same time, that's all we can go by at this point. You know, we don't have concrete lens into the future for any of us, and including the medical professionals. So if we are doing it, we are hoping for the best and saying after the flexible masking is in place, after the February vacation, that probably will be in place
For the rest of the year.
for the rest of the year.
And the whole idea of having a metric, we have the waiver. Like, we met the benchmark.
We could already do it,
We
in
have
my
it.
opinion.
We've got it. I think it was an abundance of caution that, going along with the townwide mandate and looking at the data, there was COVID. There still is a lot of COVID out there. There's COVID everywhere. There could be a debate said about, did the mask really help stop transmission? Because it seemed like everyone I knew had COVID in the past month. So, schools continue to be very safe places. There's not transmission happening there. And we proved that when we were using flexible masking, it continued to be a safe place. I agree with what Lisa said about having a date, and there are people, what I've learned from the last decision that we made is people need preparation time to wrap their heads around a change. Change is hard, I get it. And any pace is going to either feel too slow or too fast for any given reason, which is why I thought after February break would be a great time to just implement this, because people will have stepped away from school, maybe away from Westborough, and then we can just come back and kind of start with the policy again of flexible masking.
Well, I think a target date of the return from the February vacation is a logical point, pending what happens in between. So I'm guessing we're going to meet again on the 16th, which is roughly, let's say, if the Board of Health changed their policy next week, that would only be a week between then and what we could do on the 16th.
Well, then the break is only like 3 days away, though, so it doesn't matter.
It doesn't matter.
And where I'm going with this thought is that we can always change our mind in terms of moving it earlier. But I think this discussion that we're having clearly points to the idea that very soon this committee, pending certain things, will probably go back to flexible masking. And so I don't think we need to be precipitous, but I do think a date like the 28th sort of makes sense based on what we did prior to Christmas. Because there's things that people are going to be out and about again during the vacation, and a target for that return to school and masking, to me, makes sense. Would we do something sooner? Perhaps. But I have to agree with Raghu, which simply is, let's not jump into this without knowing more than what we know. We probably won't know much more, even if we pick the 28th, but at least it's the target. And I think this discussion should tell the public that, in fact, where this committee may go.
I think we will have data, but look at the numbers cut like in half. So if they continue on that, I feel like we'll be at an awesome place on the 28th. We could be at a place before that, but the idea is to pick a date and stick with it and not be wishy-washy on it, or not be like, oh, we changed our mind, we're going to move it up.
I agree.
And now a whole other set of people are very upset about moving the goalpost. So that, and I hesitate to tie it to the Board of Health, because if the Board of Health knows that, could that possibly influence any decision that they make? I don't know, but I feel like it's not, they can deal with their responsibility, which is the town, and then the Board of Health, and it's our responsibility to think about our school committee. And I would like to not leave that decision in the hands of another board.
Well, I'm not suggesting we are. I'm suggesting that we pick a date and move on.
You have such a good quality of discussion when you come together. I think that if you look toward, we had a very similar discussion. This is the exact discussion we had, and the difference is emotional in the difference of a week versus 2 weeks. And I think, the quality, we had a range of experiences last time that I think the quality of the 28th does a couple of things that will support you, which is, and again, I'll run the district based upon whatever recommendation you give me, which is what we did before. I think that it lets the number trends continue to go down. It gives you the data benchmarking that you're looking for, that the numbers are responsive, and if they aren't, you'll know on the 16th, and if you're right, you'll feel that much better heading into vacation that the trends of the numbers over the next 2 weeks, validate the planning to come in strong after vacation, that those numbers feel stable enough to move forward. They're certainly heading in the right direction. And then you'll gain the opportunity for the at-home testing to give us, some more data and stabilize that. And you give the Board of Health a window to continue to study their own data and feel confident that they can move to remove the mandate in town. I think many towns are already in that trend. I mean, again, as you look towards the number of towns, they can look at that data, how many towns are continuing to maintain that when they have a stronger rate of vaccination and low numbers as we have in Westborough. So those are the data points that they need time to study that bring them in the right direction. And it is always our target, while boards have autonomy around the parameters, to try to be collaborative in this town. And we've worked very hard to stay in relationship with every board. And I think through very tumultuous times, have worked positively with the Board of Health, even when we've been in some very different places. So I think, the chance of everything aligning properly is best with the 28th. But again, I think your quality of conversation is excellent.
Mm-hmm. I mean, the one thing people might bring up is that the vacation has people traveling. And I mean, so this exact same situation seems really familiar to me in November.
Sounds familiar.
Which is January 10th will be an excellent date for us to go with flexible masking. And when January 10th came along, I had no one email me and say it was a great day, even though many people said they were totally fine with it. And clearly, I didn't expect that because things were terrible January 10th. I would not have recommended flexible masking on January 10th. But here it is again, where we are 3 weeks away from February 28th without knowing what that will look like. So for me, making a decision for sooner always makes more sense because we know what we know what we know. We know what the numbers were last week at the middle school and high school, and they're trending downward.
Well, there's two things that are different this time. In January, Omicron was all over the place. It was spreading. So it's on the downward trend. So that is number one. And we knew the numbers will be higher because of the Omicron's presence in everywhere. So that's not there, at least as far as I know. There's no variant that's lurking around, spreading like what Omicron did. Number one. Number two is we have test at home now. So at least 65% of the kids now can test after they come back. And if they're positive, can stay home. So there's the chances of spreading is less with that kind of a setup. So I think with those two factors, we should see, we'll see some increase, but we shouldn't, in logically thinking, we shouldn't see the numbers that we saw soon after the December break. So taking that into consideration, I think February 28th seems a good date.
I guess for earlier, I would just point out that I don't think it leaves the decision in the hands of the Board of Health, because I believe that the Board of Health is looking at the data and making their decision based on the case counts and the hospitalizations and the death rates and all the points that they've been looking at. So if they make a decision that the town can go back to essentially flexible masking, because people can still wear their mask in the grocery store or wherever they choose, that the high school and Gibbons should be afforded the same.
Agree. Their agenda is
That's
different.
an interesting approach. So if I just make sure I'm following. So you would plan for the 28th, and if the Board of Health moves earlier, you would run parallel with it and start when they start, is what I hear you saying. Yeah.
And I would be all for that. In the Board of Health, I think they're meeting like on a Tuesday night. So we have to decide, like, does that mean Wednesday morning or is that then following Monday? Like,
Well,
you know
we
what I mean?
can,
Like, if
we can
want
manage that
this
communication.
whole
Yeah.
thing.
We can definitely manage that part of it with
Because
some.
if the Board of Health, sorry, excuse me, it meets next week and they still look at the numbers and their data and decide that, you know, they want to wait another week, then we're, you know, obviously another week out, which is, puts us right where Steve said, with 3 days before vacation, back to our meeting on the 16th. But if for some reason they look at the numbers this week and case counts are down, they feel comfortable with the town flexible masking, then it's a couple more weeks for our students that prefer to, and families that prefer to flexible mask.
I think they're planning on meeting Monday the 7th, so were that to happen.
Tuesday. It's Tuesday.
Yeah, but one of those 2 days. Either way, if that were to happen and they lift that mandate, then you could develop a trend of communication and begin on the Monday the 14th. You know, you could do either, or it could be, if you got that communication, I could send a communication on the 9th and you could start on the 10th. Like, it's not a hard switch.
Okay.
You know, and I think we would, depending on whatever your motions are and whatever your thoughts are in terms of direction, again, like, this is a discussion where you're making recommendations to us. I always argue that implementation of the running of the district sits with me around this piece, but we work very collaboratively on it. I see it as, I don't know that you need to take a vote, or as I need to, like, give me guidance, and we need to work on what we're going to do. So, and I obviously am going to follow your recommendations. So if you selected the 28th as a target date that you articulate, and then you track, you know, to work independent of the Board of Health, assuming that there's no state of emergency and the numbers are good and you've got time to get your legal counsel to make sure you're in line, you might need a little time for that. Then you would start on the 28th if they still had a mask mandate in place. If they meet on the 7th or the 8th, whatever day that is, and they remove that, then I would push a communication that would indicate that should they do so, that we would move to flex masking, you know, the following day, you know, as soon as I could send a communication. So for me, it would be the 9th or the 10th that I would be able to pull that together with you, run it by you, and we would implement accordingly, following the direction of the town's masking protocol. So I think, you know, it's kind of a combination of both of what you're thinking about.
Well, I think there's clear logic there because we went back to masks based on the Board of Health.
Yep.
So in effect, if the Board of Health removes its requirement, then in fact we're, if you will, predate that, which was flexible masking.
Sure.
So I think that makes tremendous sense, and we didn't vote to go back to masks.
Right.
It just happened. And I don't think we need to do anything more than what we just talked about.
Right. So I would, I mean.
And I guess the motion is what Amber just said, which would be.
I don't think there's a motion, though. I don't think we have to vote.
Okay.
We're just.
You can, I mean, it's an interesting, I mean, we've usually.
Okay, perfect. You can go.
Recommendation that you would give me, yeah.
All right.
Better.
So so
the plan.
definitely February 28th, but based on a decision by the Board of Health to go back to flexible masking within the town, we will return to flexible masking at Gibbons and the high school shortly after that decision from the Board of Health. And I'm going to leave that in the hands for implementation, like in terms of your turnaround and the quickly you can get out communications to the parent community at the high school in Gibbons.
I think that's a good procedure.
I would leave one caveat, and that is that everything that we think the Board of Health did and everything that we think DESI did hasn't changed.
Right.
Because we don't know.
Right.
Right, because
status quo with our waiver and.
Yeah, and DESI also gave a deadline for a mask mandate, and who knows what they're going to do with that.
I think
So
that,
it's like-
I think that again, I respect the quality of conversation. To Raghu's point, we're looking for continuity and that flow of decision-making, but it's also so volatile based upon all the players, DPH, DESE, the numbers, you know, so the Board of Health, us, so there's all of those pieces. So I respect that, one, we're looking for that continuity, we give clarity of messaging, I feel like I can operate with that clarity of messaging, and then we wait for the Board of Health to act next week, and then you have a plan that we're ready to be responsive for.
Yeah, thank you. And I
feels
want to
very
thank
good.
everyone who.
I just
go ahead,
wanted
Andrew.
to bring something up. So I know, like, flexible masking is about like giving students like the option to.
Yeah.
I know that some teachers might not be comfortable or like for their personal health, just like teaching in a class where a majority of the students are flexible masking. So I was wondering if we should put in place something where like teachers will be able to like
Yeah, it's still in place, Andrew. We didn't change that. It would still be in place. In other words, we're going back to what we had authorized before.
Okay, so teachers will be able to like stipulate for a specific classroom.
Yeah.
So that's a great question, Andrew. I want to make sure. We used a process. We used a kind of a clarifying process that let people, almost like we did last year, who needed to teach remotely and who would be in school. So the classrooms that we designated for masking would just basically, we would revert back to that. The guidelines for classes where masking would be required had a parameter of guidelines to it that we used. So students don't experience it at random, and neither do faculty. It's like there was a construct that went through human resources and through student services where we managed that. So we will leave those in place. I think that's an important point to recognize, that the model that we had, that the places where students needed to mask and faculty needed to mask would remain as we had them during those 2 weeks.
Okay.
I think we had that in place for some students too, in classrooms, that their peers would mask when they were sitting with them or in the entire classroom. So, and I think we would apply that model to like Mill Pond. If they reach the 80%, we can apply for a waiver there.
Right. I think when we apply for the waiver, we'll use the same HR methodology at each of the buildings to look at special circumstances within a parameter of medical need, and then put the model in place, which I think Gibbons in the high school implemented very well. Great.
Thank you to the committee for that.
Yeah, thank you.
I thought I feel so great that I can bring up one thing and by the end of the discussion feel like whatever I brought up could be, put out to pasture.
That's what Steve taught me the first week of school committee school.
Well, it always works.
And do we need to direct to collect data for the others, or are you waiting for?
We did.
Oh, we did.
You were too focused.
And I do want to thank the parents and caregivers who reached out to us with opinions, feedback, data. We appreciate those emails. I certainly read them all before I came to this meeting. And I also want to say thank you to the roughly 3,200 participants in our take-home testing program. I think that is a game changer for our community to be able to move forward in this COVID world. And I just think it's the next stage, it's the next phase, and I am really proud that so many people are participating in that. And hopefully that provides some relief for our nursing staff as they can shift their role in managing this as well.
Yeah, and administrators, and office assistants, and I mean, the machine of keeping the test and stay in place has really a broken model. So I think I can't say enough about the quality people that have been doing a great job, and we definitely want them to be able to pick up other parts of their work now. So thanks.
Thanks. Our next agenda item is to vote on the 2022-2023 school year calendar.
All right, Daniel.
And at our last meeting, we had looked at a draft of that calendar.
Good night, Maeve. Thank you.
Bye, Maeve. Thank you.
Bye, Maeve. And Daniel's got that up here. One of the pieces of data that you saw in your packet for the meeting this evening was some data collected on what other school systems may be doing for December 23rd. It looks like a lot of school districts have not voted yet or have not arrived at this juncture in their planning. So we may be ahead of the curve, but a lot of them have draft calendars ready to go, and many school districts are in the surrounding area are going to have December 23rd as a no school day. It looks like a few have it as a half day, and at least one district looks like they are holding school in their draft calendar right now on that day. So I think that data was really helpful for me in looking at what our peers.
And we've continued to update it and will. I think you're right. I mean, I think it was good to see kind of what surrounding communities are doing.
Yeah. Any thoughts on that day? Daniel, did you have anything you want to say? Or?
It's you know, it's a trade-off, as you guys mentioned before, in terms of giving a longer stretch of vacation, and then ending. So the issue is that you were discussing last time is the 23rd is a Friday, and if you give the day off, it gives more time for travel for families. It makes the winter break a little bit longer, but then it places you into the week of June 19th, and the last day of school is June 20th because the 19th is a holiday. So you awkwardly end on a Tuesday in June, but that's assuming that there's no snow days. So you get one snow day. We're into that week in any case. So it's basically a trade-off between, do you feel like a break is a little long, like, you know, it's by calendar, our calendar standards here, because at the 23rd is a Friday, it's a shorter winter break than normal.
Yes, it is the shortest it can be.
Yeah, and so, you know, I think it's 6 of 1 to some degree. There's some people that would really appreciate it, both families, I'm sure, and faculty, having the 23rd off. And on the other hand, there's some people who would say, oh, you're pushing us into the last week of June. I wish you didn't do that, especially if it doesn't snow. So,
or if it does, then we're like at June 27th, which is not anything.
So I received some feedback from parents and some teachers, because at first I heard from nobody, and I felt like I had to get some feedback. And there was a general consensus that extending the year into June was a bad idea. And I was asking people, because I was curious if the longer winter break was more important than the June days. And most people said, no, the June days is what they're against. Meaning, if it was, the last day is June 20th, or
yeah,
June 20th, then you only have the option of 3 snow days. If there's 4, we go June 26th. If we have 5 snow days, we're in June 27th as the last day of school. I think it's very risky. So if the feedback I was receiving was do not go as far into June, then I was still thinking December 23rd would be, and I would still believe a half day versus a full day. The feedback I got from teachers, and it was true, elementary school kids getting out at 4 p.m. or, you know, getting home at 3:45 p.m. to get out to travel for a holiday was really late. So having the half day is highly recommended, understandably. And then there was also talk about that day, that no matter what the day is, that day will feel, you know, somewhat discombobulated because it's the day before winter break.
Yeah.
So if it was the 22nd or the 23rd, it would feel the same way, right? So I'm still in favor of the December 23rd half day, so that the 180th day would be June 18th, and all days after that are snow day. It allows me 4 before I go into June 26th. I would have snow day 20th, 21st, 22nd, 23rd, and 26th. It just gives me 1 extra day to play the winter game.
Yeah, I would vote it. I mean, I would like to make it a half day. If you look at the list of schools that have already looked at their calendar, that already voted on it, actually is Northborough, Southborough is doing a half day for students, and Hopkinton, it just says schools in session. So I don't know if that's a half day or a full day, but those are the 2 closest in proximity to us that people would actually look at their calendars or their schedule. And I know, you know, faculty has obviously students in different school districts. I do realize that, looking at this list, but I'd prefer it was a half day on December 23rd.
Thoughts from committee members?
Well, a half day doesn't cost us doesn't increase the school calendar, so I'd be in favor of it for all the things you said.
By the way, there's also a reason this is happening if you didn't hear our discussion last time. There are 5 holidays that are not on weekends this year. That's what's causing this greater discussion. Even though that winter break is short, which would imply we're in school more days, the 5 holidays not on weekends is probably the first time in many years. And that's not a bad thing. The calendar committee did a lot of work to honor the way that families celebrate their holidays. And so, you know, looking at the 5, next year, 2 of those 5 go into weekends, and we're no longer in this situation next year. So it's something different every year. And this year just happens to be more challenging for next year.
And we always do 180. It's way to do.
Legally.
81, yeah.
Yep.
I'm okay with half day on December 23rd for all the reasons that we just discussed.
So I move that the 23rd of December 2022 be a half day.
Oh, I'll second that. I guess we're voting the whole calendar. I guess we're, yeah.
Yeah,
Oh, wait, is this just for that day or the whole calendar? Are we
the
gonna
whole calendar, right?
approve the whole,
You
calendar?
could have voted this calendar with an amendment that,
Yeah.
because as written, it's
I'm
the
voting,
full
I'm
day.
moving the calendar with the 23rd of December 2022 being a half day.
And I would second that. Then to take Kristen's job, asking if there's any further discussion, because
there
we didn't
any-
discuss the rest of the
Is there any further discussion?
Oh, I also called the clerk today because I really wanted verification about March 14th, which, so when I've said to people, the second Tuesday in March is the way it is so that the national and the local elections could now be separate. And it's been, you know, it was passed at town meeting, that change for November and March. People have said to me, there's no national election in March. There actually is the primary in March. So they decided they would keep it the second Tuesday for local election, even though every 4 years is when there is a national election, the first Tuesday in March. So just to keep it consistent, that's what the town decided at town meeting. So March 14th, which we have now designated as a professional development day, is also the local election in 2023.
Yeah, Andrew, you want to?
Yeah, I just wanted to I wanted to ask if we could possibly make the Lunar New Year as a designated holiday. I know for 2023, it's on a Sunday, so it's not like actually a school day, but like moving forward, is that a possibility?
So I'm glad you brought this up, because as I was looking at the 5 holidays, I was reminded that 3 years ago is when, is that when it went into
Our calendar
Our
committee
calendar.
objectives, yeah.
Longer than that at
It
this
was
point.
been
I
longer
know.
than that. I
They put it around
actually,
there 4 or 5 years.
5 years ago. Someone came to Citizens Request, and they had been very upset about the Lunar New Year not being what is called a Category 1 holiday. There's Category 1, 2, and 3. And the lunar holiday is a Category 2, which allows it to be a no homework the previous night, the night before lunar calendar first day, because of the way it's celebrated. And someone came to Citizens Request and said, I really think it should be a Category 1 holiday. And we had said at the time, you know, please, it had just been put into practice. And I thought she might come back, or people who wanted it to come back. And so part of me, looking at the 5 holidays, thought, when was the last time we evaluated the calendar? Because our town is constantly changing. And, you know, I wonder about, I've always wondered about the lunar holiday. And, you know, is it enough that there is no homework on the night before so that people could celebrate in a way that makes sense for them? You know,
Like, so technically, like in China, it's like a 2-week holiday. It's like a really big thing, kind of like Christmas here, like that whole like week. Obviously, it's not like reasonable to have like 2 weeks off. But I think like at least a day off, because we have like the Jewish New Year and like other New Year's like as a day off. And I know a lot of my fellow students who do celebrate the Lunar Year. So I think it would be a good idea to have that as a day off as well.
I think Thank you for your thoughts. I think it would be good to start as a member of our committee and somebody who kind of is looking at all this policy work to have Daniel share you into the calendar review that we did so you can read the context of the discussion. I'd love for you to review that and then maybe have a starting conversation with Daniel on reflections of that. I mean, if we, at some point, there's layers to it. It's a complex conversation because of, you think about Maeve Hitzenbuehler just reporting on the vast array of diverse celebrations and the diversity of our community, and the discussion you just had about not wanting to be in school in July. So there's these tensions around all of that. And so I think the report, when we did it initially with a really thoughtful committee, a very diverse committee, looked at all of that and I think wrote a salient report and came up with a protocol. It certainly could be that we put it in our rotation to review it again, but I think we would need to be thoughtful about it and really have a same comprehensive process. But maybe your insights after looking at that would be, helpful as well.
I think one of the issues here is what we just went through for 20 minutes, arguing about when in June we want to get out of school.
Right.
The reverse of that is what was just discussed, and that simply is that as the town becomes more diverse, everybody wants their holiday. I know that many schools, on the basis of not being able to deal with everybody's requests, simply eliminated any holidays associated with let's call it different cultures. And in fact, they go continuously, except on national holidays, which then eliminates this discussion of whether we go into a certain part of June or whether we have more holidays. We can't do both.
Right, which is why.
In fact, we always get tied up with how late we want to be in school in June.
Again, I totally agree.
I just don't understand the logic of continuing to argue this and that. But we ought to have an opinion, and we ought to have, if you will, the study committee that you're talking about to answer that question.
Well, I think we did have a study committee, and we did form a recommendation, and we did adopt it, and we've been implementing it thoughtfully. And I think a review of the report is always where we would begin. So it would be a thoughtful read for everyone. We can share it, and people can look at the work that was done and what's been guiding the district. I think that if you go back into the report, you'll see that some of the anchor discussion centered on the fact that we could say some districts have negated all holidays and removed all of them, except that it's convenient that Christmas is a national holiday. So it's a culturally and politically and important and diverse discussion, and the committee did a very good job with it. And so I'm not a fan of us getting random. I think it's important that we're not that you are, but I'm just saying, like, this is a good conversation for memory, but let's go back to our work and what anchors us, which is process, policy, and thoughtful, inclusive decision-making, where the committee did a very good job. So, we have extended groups that have stretch holidays. Ramadan goes for very many days. I think there's, as does the Lunar New Year celebration. You've got the two Eids on either side that come in as category 2 holidays with a similar framework. I think it was a very thoughtful report. So I think good work by us to look at, we did at the time, the report dictates it in its notation at the end that we might well expect that we would need to review it again. So I think, let's put it on our list to think about and start by, we'll reshare it to you just so you can take a look at it.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, Andrew.
Andrew, I'll send you a copy of it.
Yeah. You just got everyone homework. Good job. We'll send it to it's a very succinct report. It's not something that's laborious.
I've actually shared it with many other districts that have asked. Like there's some that have gone through the process in the last few years. So it's like an ongoing.
Exactly. And we drew from multiple districts when we researched it. And actually, I just got a call from a district recently who wanted to develop a structure similarly to ours. So I think you were kind of in front of a really thoughtful discussion, and it's grounded some good decision making. So thanks.
Any other discussion?
I forgot we didn't even vote.
Huh?
We have to vote now.
We didn't vote.
Forgot. That's why I'm asking if there's any more discussion. All right, all in favor? Aye. Anyone opposed? 4 in favor, 1 opposed. So that calendar passes with the half day on the 23rd. Thank you. The last agenda item we have is to debrief the town budget summit. So we gathered here in the Great Hall with a hybrid meeting. So we had some members dialing in or zooming in. And the town budget summit, for anyone who missed it, I'm sure you can catch a recording on Westborough TV, is a day-long meeting where our advisory finance committee and the select board come together to hear from different town departments and their budgets, and what is pushing on budgets, just everything involved in the spending leading up to the budget that will be presented at town meeting. So the schools had a chance to present their budget in the early afternoon, and there were some good questions surfaced. And I just want to give a shout out to both Dave and Amber and Daniel for that. One of the slides that you created seemed very, very helpful to everyone in the room. And it was like one of the first ones you put up where it had like some staff numbers, and it was a great snapshot. Because our budget is big and complex and it's hard to break that down. And I feel like that gave everyone a good picture to kind of hang their hat on as they ask questions. But I don't know if anyone had any other feedback about the day or.
No, I agree. I love that slide. And I think Amber and Dave and Daniel and everyone did a great job of representing our needs and why we need those resources, and not defending, but why we presented the budget that we presented. So I think it was good. A lot of content that day. So if anyone's interested, they can go back and watch snippets of it at the GBW in the morning, and then police and fire,
and then us.
And then us. So.
And it's not to say that other town department budgets aren't important, and they in fact did have some people join in the end, but there are other budgets that are more, I want to say, predictable, without all these sometimes pressures or mandates or things that come in and escalate funding, or so. It was interesting. I don't know, from your point of view, Amber, anything to share?
I think that the process of having the boards in the same place so they also get to hear each other's thinking, as much as that it keeps us from replicating some of the conversation, is valuable. I think that our data and our process is transparent and provides a lot of information. But by nature of the work, we have to keep circling through it and restating and reiterating the importance of the different actions and what we've done. You notice that, for example, we've continued to cycle through needing to remember and discuss with people, working collaboratively with those groups to pull the article for the softball field and to utilize monies that we had been able to save from not running buses to cover that article, as opposed to coming to town meeting and requesting free cash. Those types of collaborations that come from shared board discussion, I think, are really, really valuable. But even then, it's important that I think from year to year, they often lose the trail, because they're not embedded in it all the time. They lose the trail of those conversations. And so I think these meetings allow all of us to come together and kind of like, I thought it was important to reiterate the history of the trajectory of the work, like, the remembrance that we were going to see that jump in our budgeting because of the kindergarten numbers. Those types of things, I think, take the group remembrance in order to keep everybody coming into the new budget with their eyes kind of all on the same data. So I found it very productive. Certainly, we continue to refine what people respond to and what they like and what can give them information. And I think, we can certainly do more of that. You can strand out that classroom data as well. You and I were talking about that before the meeting, and look at, the 19 teachers that work with the 360 Ell students across the district, and they layer into the classroom-based teaching layer, and then you have the SPED layer, and then you have the services layer, which is the maintenance and the admin. And so, we can certainly provide that. I'm not a fan of providing data just to provide data. It takes a lot of time and energy. I need to know what question they're trying to answer. And I think that's the essential part of these kind of meetings. So, I thought it was productive.
I thought you handled that very well by virtue of doing a high-level summary and directing them into the binder each time a specific question came up. Obviously, your ability to recall generally where stuff was in the binder was quite helpful for people that asked, that level of question. But first of all, I have to congratulate you on what I thought was a very difficult period of time with the understanding of the people in the room was either very strong or very weak in terms of what you were presenting. And I thought you handled the whole process quite well.
Thank you. Good team effort.
Right. And
I would just add that I felt that the budget summit was, sometimes what I describe as the complexities of the business of running a school. And I think that the summit allows us to not only provide the equity, but justification for, the resources that we put forth. And I think specifically about our budget, in all the history of the finance work that I've done for different districts or independent schools, this is one of the budgets that seems and genuinely feels, justifiable. Related to that slide, there's for us, there's little to no ask in there. These are contractual agreements, which everyone knows. But for me, I welcome the opportunity to discuss the uniqueness and the almost the complexities of building a budget in the school system, but at the same time, similar to what Steve is saying, it is difficult to prepare, to presentate, to communicate to audiences of various levels. So there is a challenge in that. But I think, just to reiterate, this is one of those budgets for me where it's, I have a hard time finding opportunities to make modifications. So it really feels that I can get up there and present, wholeheartedly and with a lot of confidence that, I believe in what the ask and how it relates into giving back to our community and to our kids.
So always when we have one of those meetings, we learn a lot and we just get better every time at, how to present the data, how to tell that story, and then how to answer the questions. And it's not a one and done, so what that means is we'll get more questions from finance and from select board, and we'll just continue to exchange.
I know. Every time it happens, you think there's things you're going to remember. Like, we've been at this a while, a lot of years, and I'm still frustrated that when they asked us the per pupil expenditure, that I didn't remember automatically that the health coverages are embedded in there.
Yeah.
I don't feel comfortable when those answers are off. It's kind of an awkward feeling when you're in front of a group like that. But again, I think it was productive, and we've built a repertoire of understanding and amongst the boards, and I think that's helpful. Mm-hmm. So there's more to do.
I was going to say, are there any opportunities to, I know in the past we always talked about taking the budget on the road, but I don't know if any of those groups are meeting in person or if, or even virtually, but sometimes I know it's good to circle the budget around to the different civic groups in town.
Yeah, I actually had texted Karen Henderson to see whether or not, I know that Christy and I are going to do breakfast with the cop over at the senior center on the 18th. To talk about the budget, and that's a meeting that Jeff holds for breakfast, and he invites different people, so Christy and I are going to go together. I'm interested in thinking about talking with Karen Henderson to see if we might do, we could go to Frank and Mary and visit and talk there. I think we also might put together our own kind of, message to remind people to get informed about coming to town meeting. I'd be intrigued in doing that with some partnerships, maybe with John Arnold and Christy and Alan and Kristen. And, it's been a while and we have new members in the community. It takes that constant re-education. And then visiting different groups. A lot of groups are still meeting virtually. So I think you're right, Sarah. I think we need to start to think about visiting the parent organizations. In the past, I've done a Mill Pond presentation and invited all of them. And then sometimes I've done individuals. I do think that the virtual PGA meetings have had some really good attendance at Gibbons, for example, this year, so I can go and present at each of those. I'll start kind of pulling that together in the next week.
Yeah, that'd be great. And again, just, we're looking for everyone to come that day for town meeting, to be there, to listen, to come for the whole day. But if there's something on that warrant, there's an article there that you are passionate about, you should be there, because that's your chance to vote.
Yes, and I did, as a series of that training session, I put out an invitation. I'm taking a couple selectmen on a tour of schools on March 1st, if any of you want to join us. And I'll put together it takes a long time to get around to all of them, but I'll do probably like the preschool, Hastings, and then the high school. I'll do a mix of, a couple settings and get a look at those. And then I'm again happy to do that for any FinCom members, or, I think if you have an opportunity to see the instruction in the buildings, you get a picture of what that student experience looks like. So happy to do that for any of you who want to get a live look at schools you haven't been in a while. And I'll let you know, again, I think it's March 1st, if any of you want to join me when I take them on a tour.
Yeah.
I think I have 2 selectmen going with me right now. And so I could open that up to FinCom as well.
Yeah, they may be some.
It's nice to do it in kind of a couple people, just because for time and energy, if we're going to do like 2 hours together or an hour and a half and go to several places, it's good to take a couple people.
Yeah, nice. Thank you. Thanks for the offer. All right, the next meeting of the school committee is scheduled for Wednesday, February 16th. Motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Second?
Thank you. All in favor? All right, we are adjourned. Thank you.